Okay, so this is the Trackday trophy round at the Bronze Hatch Grand Prix circuit. We qualified second in Class D, although we finished fifth overall. The throttle stuck wide open straight off the start line, so we lost a lot of time going around in the first lap trying to manage that situation, and had to pit at the end of the first lap to fix the throttle. Overall, that put us about 1 minute and 15 seconds down behind the rest of the field in last place. So pretty much this was a race about mechanical failure and trying to recover the position. Overall, we finished 13 seconds behind second place, so given that we lost 1 minute 15, I think we could have done pretty well and recovered that, but unfortunately that's racing. So let's watch the footage of the race and see how we got on anyway. Here we are on the grid, all formed up, 32nd place overall, Track Day Trophy and Team Day Trophy combined grid. Getting ready to launch off the line. Building a few revs, ready for the lights to go out, and we're off. Fantastic start, really did well here, gained a couple of places. At this point I'm now realising that the throttle's stuck down and I'm changing through the gears, trying to figure out how I'm going to get the car to slow down for the first corner. We've just been hit there by one of our competitors in Class B, trying to turn in too early. So just adding more confusion to the situation as we're trying to manage the sticking throttle and now being struck by another competitor. But into the first corner, we either have a choice of being fully on the throttle or hitting the brakes hard to release the throttle and having nothing to go with around the corners. So a bit of a mixed bag here in terms of trying to get the performance out of the car. As you can see, we've slipped back several places while we're trying to sort this, and we've reported the issue back to the team in the pits, and we're deciding now whether we need to come in and solve the problem or try and race on through it. At this point the option is only to floor the throttle down the straight where we can use full acceleration, but then during the corners where we're on cold tyres we need to apply partial throttle application, and unfortunately that choice just isn't available to us, so we're losing significant amounts of time here straight away. Quite frustrating. We're now at the back of the field now, just trying to keep up as best we can, nursing the problem that we've got. All the time here through all the corners we're just losing more and more time because we're having to go through with no throttle applied, just heavy on the brakes, making sure the car doesn't spin itself off into the grass verge. And so we come round to complete the lap, straight into the pits, and let's get the team to have a look at the problem and see if we can sort it. At this point the race is pretty much over before it started because we're now losing time against the entire field. So we're straight into the pits here. Mike dives into the car. He's now trying to assess what the issue is with the throttle. Turns out that it's the floor hinge which is actually sticking the throttle. So he's now releasing the floor hinge application from the throttle. Therefore we can start to control it and remove the sticking issue. Okay, we're good to go. Head back out the pit lane, watching the 60 km/h speed limit, and back on track and trying to gain up some of the time that we've lost. Essentially from this point here forward up until the next round of pit stops, which we have to make halfway through between 15 and 30 minutes, we're trying to catch up on some of the time that we've lost and track down our competitors. We're now about 1 minute and 15 seconds behind the rest of the field, which is a significant gap to make up in a 23 lap race. Bearing in mind that tyres are cold at this point in the race and we still need to warm them up to give us full adhesion and traction through all the corners. Unlike the last race at Rockingham, where there was quite a lot to comment on as we were working our way through the field and battling with competitors, the first 10 laps or so of this race are rather uneventful. Essentially, we're trying to make up lost time and track the rest of the field back. The fastest time we managed overall here in qualifying was around a 1:53 dead. The first few laps that we're putting in through the race here are around 1:54, so we're about a second off the pace where we want to be. Essentially we get down to the 1:53s or a high 1:52 towards the end of the race, which is an improvement on qualifying performance, but we're struggling here to get right on the pace. Choice I made, given that we had suffered a significant setback in terms of the race pace here and in terms of position on track, was to try and use the opportunity as an extended test session. So essentially trying different approaches to the corners, using heavy applications of the throttle, the sort of thing that we wouldn't risk in the race for fear of running wide or losing position. But here I'm going to experiment with using heavy applications of the throttle, getting the back end to come round more aggressively, and just seeing if there's anything we can learn from this session above and beyond, trying to recover positions which are pretty much out of scope for this formula. As we go through this corner here at Surtees, this is where the track now moves away from the Indy circuit onto the Grand Prix circuit. So we're heading out away now on quite a long stretch down Hawthorne Hill and towards Hawthorns. This is where you have some fairly fast right-hand corners, 3 of them in a row if we hit left at Stirling's. Much more committed corners and much higher speed than the Indy circuit, which is actually quite a lot of fun to drive and to set the car to attack. This corner here at Westfield I'd struggled with all day, still experimenting with lines, and actually span the car around a full 360 degrees and qualifying there, trying to get the fastest line out of it, but never really got to grips with it the entire day. Sheen curve there is a fantastic corner, you're blind sight on the apex coming over the hill, really got to launch the car over the inside apex of the corner and try and cut it out and let the car run out the left hand side, but it's a lot of fun to launch the car over that. Back round through clear ways and into Clark Curve, and we're back onto the Brabham straight here. You can just see now the Class A and some of the Class B cars are starting to catch us up. These are the faster cars which are now coming round, obviously much closer to us than they would have been, having lost that 1 minute and 15 seconds in the first round of pit stops and solving that throttle problem. The challenge here really is to try and position the car such as to let them through without compromising my line or ability to apply the throttle and therefore impair our lap times. One of the learning points from this race was the fact that I compromised my lines too heavily, letting these cars through, and actually dropped down to 157s, losing 3 seconds a lap when I was being lapped by the faster Class A and Class B runners. So something to work on in the future races is being a bit more defensive of the lines that I need to take and making those faster cars come around me. Essentially you're driving, looking in the rear view mirror here, trying to keep out the way of these cars and making sure you don't come together on a fast apex, which could end in quite a messy tangle. You see there when this Mini's come through in the Class Bs, as I've wanted to hit the apex and apply the throttle, I've had to allow him to come through and therefore lift off the throttle, which is impacting the lap time that we're going to get out of this particular lap. But clearly some opportunity for improvement there. Slightly unfortunate that the throttle managed to stick itself in the first lap. We'd been testing there on the Friday, qualified early on Saturday morning, no issues with the throttle sticking, no sign of the problem until even leaving the paddock. Unfortunately, when we hit the start line and then nailed the throttle from there, it just stuck right to the floor. So timing couldn't have been worse for that. So down Paddock Hill, this is a fantastic corner. Really lining the apex up for that, carrying a lot of commitment into the curve and getting back on throttle early. It's quite an exciting corner, especially off camber as the car wants to run out and push out to the left. So at this point in the race, the pit stop window is about to open shortly. It's a 45-minute race. The window's open between 15 minutes in and 30 minutes into the race. We decide that we're going to pit fairly early in the stint, clear the pit stop. As you can see just there's been an incident on the track. We've got double waved yellows. Giles in the MX-5 as part of the Bullshit racing team has actually been involved in that collision, and his 3 cars have been taken out in that corner. Overall, we're starting to now recover positions against our competitors in terms of time on track, but we are a significant way behind, so whilst we're making seconds up each lap on catching them up, they're still a long way down the road that we need to close that gap. As I mentioned, all the cars that you're now seeing coming past us here are Class A and B cars, so they're significantly faster than the Class B cars we're driving, and we're just trying to manage the position on the track to let them through with having as little impact on our lap time as possible. As you can see again, just being quite committed on the throttle of that corner, trying to experiment the line. Unfortunately, on that occasion the car ran wide and we didn't quite make the apex as we intended to. As I said, it's a constant struggle with throughout the lap. And here we come into the pits for our mandatory pit stop halfway through the race. So we have to make a 2-minute stop here. It's part of the driver change. It's a 2-driver event for most of the teams. However, you can run 1 driver, which is what we do in our particular team. But we have to bring the car back into the pits, stop for 2 minutes, get out the car, close the door, get back in the car, and out we go. We can just see Tom coming back in the car on the left hand side there, just to help me get back in and buckled up again. Just having a little chat to Mike about how the race is going, and he's given me a bit of a slap on the wrist for losing 3 seconds a lap, getting overtaken by the faster drivers. I should be losing tenths and not seconds.
36 seconds, 35.
Start the car back up again, we're ready to go back out on track once it gives us the signal that we've been in the pits for long enough. Once we leave the pits then it's a straight run to the checkered flag, so it's all about tracking those cars down that are further through the field than we are, seeing what we can recover in terms of position. So heading back out onto the track, 60 km/h speed limit in the pit lane. And there's the competitors also doing their mandatory pit stop at the same time. The car you can see in front of us now is the Class D Toyota MR2, which is the Racing with Prestige team. These guys went on to win the Class D and are actually a significantly faster car in the field. The drivers are able to extract a high 1 minute 50 out of there compared to our high 1 minute 52s. So they're definitely a target for future races in terms of improving our driver skills, try and keep up their lap times, but quite a fast pair of drivers in that car. Unfortunately, we're hoping that we can follow this car around, check their lines, see how they're doing, maybe learn something from their approach to the track, but they pit at the end of this lap, and any opportunity to follow them around and see how they're extracting extra performance and time out of the circuit was not available. The car in front you can see is a Peugeot 306 in Class C. As you can see, the gap isn't really increasing significantly around that section that we're following round. So overall I think we're doing a fairly reasonable pace given that we're a class lower, and again just speaks to the overall performance that we have as a package. Still struggling to get the turn in right in that corner. I think on reflection perhaps we're turning slightly too early, and maybe that's something that we need to learn from that particular corner and try and apply next time it comes to Brands. Again, we've been following the Peugeot 306 in Class C ahead of us round for a lap or so now. He's not gaining significant distance on us, so that's encouraging, knowing that we're managing to keep pace with a higher class car. Through this particular section of the lap, we managed to make quite a bit of time from the competitors, just carrying a bit more speed and commitment through the corners than some of the slower competitors were, which was all satisfying. Here you want to hang right until the dip of the trackers have been completed, and then come left, ready for the fast entry into Paddock Hill. Just getting a bit of oversteer there in the car. Really committed on the throttle, trying to use the back end to help pivot the car on its apex and get it through the corner. And as I said, experimenting with application of the throttle on this particular race outing, given that we weren't going to get positions, resulting in a significant amount of oversteer as we turn around the corner at grooves there. Really is a fun feeling to run out to the left hand side of the track there, right up to the edge of it, as you come sweeping off that fast corner and see the car run out there and you know you've just made it. Very satisfying. So in the distance there you can see an orange and black Ford Focus, which is in Class 3, that's being driven by Dan Reed. Dan and the orange and black Ford Focus now preoccupy the second half of this race for us, and we managed to track him down and have quite a lot of fun racing on track for position, passing each other a number of times. So this was quite a lot of fun, having the fact that we've just had to go around by ourselves for quite a lot of time trying to gain position, and now we actually do some real racing on track and learn a little bit about how to position the car, racing against Dan in the Ford Focus. As I say, again, Dan's racing and driving in a Class B car, which is 2 classes higher than the BMW we're racing, so I feel relatively satisfied that we managed to keep pace and compete with a Class B car 2 classes higher than us. Of course, that doesn't really compensate for the fact that we didn't get a class result out of the race, but what can we do? We can't win it all. So as you can see, corner to corner, we're starting to reel these faster cars in, which is a satisfying feeling when you can see the time being taken out of them. oversteer again there, just being really heavy with the throttle, just seeing how much more speed we can carry on the corners. Probably more aggressive on this race than we would normally do with the throttle, but it was a good opportunity to learn. So down Pilgrim's Drop and Hawthorns Hill, we're really struggling to keep pace with the faster cars here. They've got a much higher power to weight ratio, which enables them to accelerate away from us in the straights. So essentially what we're doing here is carrying more speed through the corners and a faster exit speed, which limits the differential between the straights. However, the longer gaps then, where we've got down Brabham Straight on the start-finish and Hawthorns, just as we come off Surtees, then these cars will pull away and open up a gap as they exploit their power to weight advantage. As you can see now, though, compared to the last lap, we've closed significantly. We're probably within 5 car lengths as opposed to the 15 we had last lap, so reasonable progress. Being troubled by some of the Class C competitors coming through, compromising the application of the throttle on the turn into the apex of the corner, as we have to lift and wait for them to pass before we can get back on it to avoid a collision. And again, running wide there on the exit of Graham Hill Bend, as we're exploiting and playing with the throttle. But here we see Dan runs out to the right hand side to allow these two Fiestas to pass, which gives us an opportunity to clear those past, which allows us opportunities on the inside of him, down Hawthorn Hill, and carry a faster exit speed and take the position. Again, you can see through some of the corners here, managing to keep up with much faster pace cars. That's an E36 M3 in front of us, which through the twist stuff hasn't managed to make any headway or pull away from us at all. It's only encounters a smaller straight that he's able to make his power advantage show. So we haven't got round to having the rear view camera fitted just yet, which is something we need to get on. But if you can look backwards now, essentially what you'll see is Dan in the Ford Focus coming back at us and trying to attack the position. So we're now racing with him on track and having a lot of fun doing so. I'm looking in the rear view mirrors there and over to the left quite a lot. We've got faster cars coming through, which we're just making sure we don't turn in on them the collision on track. This particular race being a mixture of both Trackday and Team Trophy, had 44 cars on track at one time, which is a significant increase from the standard 30 odd car grid we'd get on a Trackday Trophy, so quite a busy position on track. And as we've seen there, the Porsche 964 significantly compromised the turning. We had to wind a bit of lock off the steering wheel and remove the application of the throttle to avoid a collision there. So again, it's about learning to improve the positioning of the car sufficiently. We're defending the line and we can maintain full point to the corner without having to compromise that to allow him through. So a little learning point to take away there. One of the positives we can take away from our race at Brass Hatch was the fact that we managed to get very consistent lap times, lap after lap. With the exception of where we were being passed, most of the laps that we're putting around here are within tenths of each other, so we're able to consistently extract the same performance, which is important in terms of maintaining that overall momentum through the field. As you can see here, however, Dan's managed to put one up the inside of us through Druids. And pushed us out wide, so he's now retaken the position and we're going to attempt to pass him again. So you'll see as we go down, Pilgrim's dropping into Hawthorne Hill here, that the extra power to weight that Dan has here enables the Focus to pull away. What we'd like to do is close that gap as much as possible. If we can stay close to Dan's car, we can actually get a drag from him down that straight, which will reduce the overall drag on the car and enable us to accelerate slightly faster than we would otherwise. The sort of speed gap we expect to see down the straight like that when we're cloning the car behind is about 8 to 9 miles an hour, which is significant. But as you'll see through the faster corners here, we're able to close right up. Unfortunately, what we're not able to do is maintain application of the throttle because we're having to lift so we don't run into the back of his car. And on that time there, going through Stirlings, we've managed to go up the inside and perform a pass. So we've been taken on the entry into Druids, but we've reclaimed the position as we come through Stirlings on the inside, which was quite fun. Just exploiting the fact that we're able to carry a bit more speed through the corner there. Of course now defending down the long straights as Dan comes back and is using his power to weight ratio. Again there, two big moments of opposite lock as again heavily on the throttle, back end's braking traction, so we're having to apply opposite lock to counteract that and make the corner, but quite a lot of fun inside the car. Coming towards the back end of the race here, we probably have about another 4 or 5 laps to go. We're talking to the team on the radio, so we know where we are in terms of track position and how much longer is left. So it's really a case of trying to push as much as we can. We're trying to track down Jim, who's ahead of us here. We're starting to see him in the distance. He's running in 5th place and is someone who we've raced against in the last couple of races and enjoyed that. So he's really the target that we're on in terms of class position. running wide there, laying the outside rear wheel just onto the grass a little bit, but managed to keep the car straight home. And there comes Dan again, up the inside through Druids, which was the place he passed us last time, so clearly it's a move he's been lining up and he's quite comfortable being up the inside there. What we see here, however, is we're able to carry much more speed through Surtees and to close him down. Unfortunately, it's not a significant enough power to rate advantage that we can then accelerate him down the straight. So we're just trying to stay as close as we can to him and get the benefit of getting a drag. Then here we're going through the other ST220 Mondeo, which have been suffering with the engine in limp home mode, so significantly out of place there, but just having to move around on the track. Here we go through Westfield, heading up to Sheen Curve here. Again, this is where we're able to carry more speed through the corners, close a bit of a gap, but it's all a case of tracking him down here now. We need to maximise any opportunity we've got to close gaps through the corners, knowing that we're going to lose performance and space over the straight sections of the track. So we can now see Jim Hart there in the MX-5 in front of us, who we've been racing for the last couple of races and really enjoying. Jim's a great guy and racing with the Porsche team, which it's a lot of fun to talk to them and have a bit of inter-team rivalry. So we're now focusing on Jim there in 4th place in the MX-5, hoping we can pass him. Of course, the challenge to getting to that is that we need to pass Dan in the Ford Focus first. So Jim is probably the first Class D car that we've actually seen out on track, although we've managed to pass a couple in the pit stops and we've lost a few to unclassified do not finishers. But it's nice to see a fellow competitor in our class, the one that we're tracking down and trying to beat. Again, throughout the course of this race, whilst we haven't seen a lot of performance or action out on track in terms of progress, we have actually gone from 1 minute 15 down to being 13 seconds off second place. Again here, closing Dan down, managing to carry much more speed through the actual apex of the corners, really chopping the back end of his car, but unfortunately he's right where we need to be, so we're not able to accelerate through him and therefore having to lift. Getting a bit desperate here, we're trying up the inside there through Sterling's. Really nice close bit of racing there between the pair of us. Whilst the cars didn't actually touch bodywork, we were that close that he pushed the driver's wing mirror in on my car. So nice clean racing between the pair of us there, and we had a good chat and a good laugh about that afterwards. Really enjoyable. So we're now into the closing couple of laps for the race here. We know there's very little opportunity now to make those places up. We're really trying to push hard to try and catch Jim, but recognising that he's a good distance up the road. So, like the move that we just tried with Sterling's there, which is a little bit ambitious, trying to go up the inside. We'll probably try a few more manoeuvres here that we wouldn't normally try in terms of lines, knowing that they're not very successful, but it's worth a try at this point in the race. Nothing to lose. Come through Hawthorns here, we're going to line them up into the right-hander at Westfield, and we're going to try a slightly ambitious line around the outside. Trying to carry the speed, car runs wide onto the grass, we lose traction and Dan pulls away. Probably quite an ambitious manoeuvre, but given that we're into the last lap of the race, it was worth a try. Car getting a little bit out of shape and unbalanced there. And for the final time round Clearways, through Clark Curve, and back onto Bradman Straight to take the checkered flag. And that's the end of our race. Better luck next time at Silverstone.